Well, hello everyone. It's so good to see you. So good to be here. This is Your Writing Questions Answered with Emily P. Freeman. And of course, I am not Emily P. Freeman. I am with Emily P. Freeman. Hello, Emily.
Hi, Nikki. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to be here with you. And I am Nikki. I am part of the Hope Writers host team. And I've got Emily P. Freeman with me, and she is here to answer all your writing questions. And Emily is one of the co-founders of Hope Writers. She's also, as you probably know, a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. She is a podcast host where she cuts through everything and helps us discern our next right thing. And in this live Q&A, we want to help you. We want to help answer your writing questions and really get through and past those googleable the advice and really speak directly to the soul of your writing life. And so why not say hi in the comments? If you want to say hi to Emily, say hi. And if you have some questions for her about writing, about your writing life, things that you might be struggling with, places you might be stuck, why not pop them in the comments and we will get to them. We will get to as many of them as we can. But Emily, I can't believe there is anyone out there who is not familiar with you and your writing and your wonderful podcast, The Next Right Thing. But for anyone who might not know you so well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you like to write about?
I would love to, Nikki. Well, first, it's just so great to be here with you. One of my favorite things to do is to talk with other writers like you and anyone watching about writing, about the writing process. And that's one of the things that I do. I've kind of made it my job to do this. And so I'm just thrilled to be here with you. It's super fun. So I've been writing all my life, to be quite honest. But it was when I was younger, I never really thought that this could be my job. I thought it was just sort of a hobby. But as I grew up, I realized, wow, there are people who do this as their human grown-up job. And so that's something that I've been doing since my first book came out, which was in 2011 was my first book, Nikki. It's been 10 years. This actually, hold on, this month it's been 10 years since my first book
Wow.
released. I didn't realize that till this
Congratulations.
moment. Thank you for sharing that moment with me. But I love where I love to stand as a writer, and I think most writers probably can discern this for themselves, but I love to stand on the corner of faith and creativity. And so that's where like my most favorite conversations take place. And then I don't really know what I think about those things, though, whether it be faith or creativity, until I start writing them down. And so that's why I think it's such a wonderful time to be a writer in 2021, because we can write words. And at Hope Writers, we talk about the importance of writing words of hope, and we can write them and then immediately we can connect with a reader. And sometimes we can romanticize the days of yore when the writers got to write in their little cabins and then they would send their words off and, a publisher would take care of things. But these days we get the honor and the privilege of being able to immediately connect with our readers. And so that's why stuff like this is super fun to me. So just briefly, I'm in North Carolina. I'm one of the co-founders of Hope Writers. I've written 5 books. My most recent one came out in 2019 called The Next Right Thing. And it's just super fun to be here for a little while and to talk writing with other writers.
Well, we're really glad you're here, Emily. And I can see people joining us in the comments, Marcia and Jess. We're so glad you're here. And you talk about kind of always having been a writer, but I have heard you tell the story of your binder of writing. And I think it was in college.
Yeah.
You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But then you went to maybe a writing conference, and that was the moment you realized, gosh, I really am a writer. Will you share that with us? Because I know we've got some questions coming in and I want to, get to those as well. But that's such a great story.
I would love and I would hate to share that with you, Nikki. But here's the thing. So before there were blogs, before there were, fancy ways of writing on the internet, I would write on my computer just in like the equivalent of a Word doc, and I would type all of my innermost thoughts and feelings. And then I would print them out and I would put them into a page protector, those plastic page protectors, and I would put them in a binder. And I wrote like single spaced, full pages. And I still have this binder. I really feel like I should take care of it and get rid of it because it's terrifying to imagine it being read now, Nikki. I'm like, what was I thinking? But this was, I mean, when I look back, it was high school. It was really high school and college is when I filled that binder up. But I'm so curious to know if anyone listening has a similar practice or had a similar practice where you just have writing in a journal or in a drawer somewhere or on a Word document and you've got it tucked away somewhere. And it's weird because I never really imagined anyone reading that, but I somehow was aware of a reader as I wrote. And it's such a weird thing to say, but I knew that, there was a reader out there that maybe one day I would connect with. And when that became a reality for me was I went to a writing conference, and I think all writers have this moment where you realize oh, I'm a writer. I went to a writing conference. It was the summer of 2008. And I had signed up for the conference, and I belongs there just like anyone else. I paid my ticket, did the thing. But when I walked up to the registration table, the lady asked me, she said, so are you here for the writing conference? Are you a writer, or are you here for the speaking track? And so I had to say with my out loud voice, Nikki, I had to say, I'm a writer. And instead of just casually oh, I'm here for the writing part, or I'm a writer, I had this moment of panic. Am I allowed to call myself a writer?
Yeah.
And so I said it, and she, gave me the folder, and it was fine. But I had to sit for a moment in the lobby and just kind of gather myself and think, wow, I'm at a writing conference. I'm doing this thing. And no one told me I was allowed to. And I think that's kind of the thing that all writers somehow have to come to, is recognizing, you know what? I'm going to pick myself here, and I'm going to choose to make some progress and move forward without anyone else's permission.
Yeah. And nobody told you could, but nobody told you couldn't. She didn't kind of say, actually, Emily, you're not a writer. No. Nobody came and chased you down.
Right.
So maybe you can help Jess out, Emily. She says I struggle to define my message and my audience. I've always felt like I have things to say, but I don't know exactly what they are. And you said, we can connect with the reader almost immediately. How can Jess kind of maybe hone down who her audience is and what it is she actually wants to say? It sounds like she's got something bubbling up within her that needs to get out, but she's not sure what it is or who it's for.
Well, Jess, first of all, I can relate. I think this is a wonderful question. I think there are probably lots of people watching or who watch this in replay who feel the same way. Yeah. And so the first thing I would say is you're asking the right questions. I want to define my audience, and I want to know what my message is. It's what do you have to say? And who do you have to say it to? And I think a lot of people write for a really long time before they answer those two questions. And so I would say that rather than think about, do I want to write a book? Do I want to start a podcast? Do I, kind of trying to answer the questions of what I call figuring out your packaging. A lot of people jump to the packaging. And I would encourage you to stay in that question that you have, which is, what is my gift? Don't jump to the package before you know what the gift is. And the gift is not just about something, it's actually for someone. So you have to continue to write and define, who am I talking to? And sometimes an easier way to do that is to decide first, who am I not talking to? Sometimes it's easier to know who you're not talking to than to know who you are talking to. And you mentioned, and I just want to briefly, not to, I don't want to bury the lead here, because the reason we're here at all is because this week Hope Writers is open for membership, and we come in here and we have some live events to try to share that with writers. And here's the deal. You had mentioned, I don't have it in the budget to join Hope Writers for the long term, but I hope to one day soon. And Jess, I just want to tell you and anybody else watching that now's the time, because we're offering a $1 trial this for 2 weeks that you can join. And so even if you feel like I can't make a long-term commitment to writing, you can make so much progress in just 2 weeks of Hope Writers. And Nikki will talk about that more at the end, kind of when we're done. But I didn't want you to hop off and not know that we're open now. And that's one of the reasons why, is because a lot of writers are like, is this in the budget? I don't know if I can afford this. And we just want to say, we want to make it really easy for you to make progress in your writing. I think that could be a great next step for you, Jess.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Jess, if it's on any consolation, I joined Hope Writers in exactly the same position that you are. I didn't know really who my audience was or what my message was, and now I have a book out there, a podcast, all the things. And so, as Emily said, those things, the book and the podcast, are the how. But what Hope Writers really helped me do was figure out the who and the what. And so I do want to encourage you to, you've got nothing to lose for $1. But James asks, Emily, how do you stay focused on a book topic when you have about 800,000 other ideas? He's obviously an ideas machine.
Yeah.
Jump into your head whenever you take a break.
James, first of all, I think that to be a writer, to have 800,000 ideas, that's like, we can all relate to that. And it is like, it's shiny object syndrome, right? When you start to try to focus on one thing and then you kind of move over here. And I guess I wish that you were sitting in front of me, James, because what I'd want to do would be to ask you a bunch of questions. And some of the questions that I would ask you would be, how do you know you've got a book topic? It would be, I wonder how many of those 800,000 other ideas would actually fit in the book topic that you have. I would also want to ask you who you're writing to. Sometimes that we have to, before we kind of start getting on the track of, I have this book idea, because a lot of writers, this is what we do, y'all. We all do this. We think, I have an idea and I want to write about it. And we immediately jump from idea to book. But in fact, one of our Tuesday teachers inside of Hope Writers was an author writer named Beth Moore. And she talked about how she starts with a tweet. And it starts with 140 to, how many characters is a tweet now, Nikki? They've doubled it.
It's like more.
200 something characters. And she's like, I tweet it first. That's my idea. I have an idea. I put a tweet out. And if that satisfies me, she said, I'm so relieved, because that means I don't have to talk about it anymore. But oftentimes the conversation on Twitter gets going and she has more to say. And then she might make it an Instagram post, which is a little bit longer. And then she might make it an email to her readers. Then she might make it a sequence, or she'll make it a weekend retreat. And so you see how it builds. And if she tries every other outlet first, and that idea, and again, notice, she's sticking with one idea that whole time. It's not easy, but that's how you know if you have a book length idea, is if you keep having more to say about it. So I love her like saying that she said something like a book is a last resort. Like, that's the last thing you'll do, not the first thing. And so I think it's fantastic advice. And I've taken it many times from her since I heard her say that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Beth Moore and the other Tuesday teachers that are all part of what you get when you join Hope Writers, but the advice to start small. And as we would say in England, run it up the flagpole and see who salutes. And I don't know whether you use that expression here, but yeah, just really testing it out. So maybe give that a go, James. And one of the other things that a lot of writers struggle with is finding time to write. It's a perennial question. We talk about in Hope Writers, in the community. We ask our Tuesday teachers, and they all have different advice. But you started writing when you had very young children, including twins. How did you find time to write in all that craziness? And what did that struggle look like for you?
I'm glad you used the word struggle, because it was, my dear. That was definitely, that was something I had to work with, because I think we a lot of times think that if something is difficult, then maybe it means I'm not cut out for it, or maybe it means it's not the right time. And sometimes that, that may be true, but I don't think it's really ever true with writing. I think it's always time to write. It might not be always time to publish or to share that writing publicly, but if you can find time to write, and oftentimes we talk about that as write in the cracks. And for years, especially when my kids were little, I wrote in the cracks. I would write like on the backs of receipts, or I would write, in the 20 minutes that the twins were taking a nap. What really became my writing time was they went to preschool twice a week between the hours of 9 and 1. But of course, they had to be there at 9. So I didn't start writing till 9:15. And then I had to stop at 12:30 because I had to go pick them up. But those hours were sacred. And I think that when it comes to finding time to write, it's going to look different for everybody. But I do think scheduling it on the calendar makes all the difference. If you can put it in there like an appointment, and this is not for you to clean your baseboards, or to do your dishes, or to set dentist appointments, or if someone has a lunch request for you to go out to lunch. No, it has to be an appointment just like anything else. And you have to be kind to yourself to know that even when you do set your writing time as an appointment, sometimes the writing is really crummy. And I think making peace with crummy writing really helps me make peace with the little amount of time I have to do it in. Because there's nothing more discouraging than to set the time aside and then you write and then you read it and you're like, that was a waste of my time. But I'm here to tell you, writers, that taking time to put words down on paper is never a waste of time, that it's always going to be making you better. So that's my biggest advice when it comes to finding time to write is there is no wrong, and doing it, putting it on the calendar is absolutely key.
Yeah, it's so important. There is I can't remember who said it, but it's something about, what gets scheduled gets actually ends up happening. But I know that sounds terribly obvious, but if you don't schedule, if it's not on the calendar, it's not happening. And I know a number of our Tuesday teachers have spoken about things like just setting a timer or writing continuously and even finishing mid-sentence, just so you're not, faced with this white canvas and blinking cursor when you get back to it the next time. So those can help. And one other thing that writers we often struggle with and is the mind talk and the imposter syndrome. And so you find all this time and you make time in the cracks. Did you ever worry that, it all might be for nothing? You might never get published. You might never make any money or convince your husband, John, to do it. I mean, did you ever worry about that? Or were you born just like, I know all the things, it's going to be okay?
I still worry about that, Nikki. I mean, and I know that sounds silly because I have written some books and I do this as my literal grown-up job. But I think there's something about this creative work that we all always feel a little bit on the outside. In order to be a writer, we have to be observers. And in order to observe, you kind of are on the outside. And sometimes on good days, that makes for really great writing. And on bad days, that makes for us to feel like imposters. And so, yes, absolutely. I used to wonder a lot more. It's gotten better, so there is hope. But I have wondered often, like, am I doing this right? Do I have what it takes? And I've learned to kind of talk myself through that. And I'll tell you what has helped the most is having a community of writers around me who get it. Because that's the thing is I can talk with John till I'm blue in the face, who's my husband, about, my insecurities in writing, or like wondering if I'm wasting my time, or wondering if this is resonating. And he can empathize and listen, but he doesn't have that same struggle because he's not, he doesn't consider himself a writer in that way. Whereas my Hope Writers community, my mastermind community, like the people who are doing this work, y'all, we get it. We get how weird and crazy it is that we question what we're doing, even while we're doing it, even while we're succeeding at doing it. And that's just part, I think making peace with knowing that's part of the creative and writing process and you're not alone in it, that has made all the difference for me.
Yeah, I totally agree about the power of community to keep us accountable, to share in our highs and our lows, and to help us figure out what's next. And that, for me, in Hope Writers, was absolutely a game changer because I didn't know anyone who was a writer or trying to do this. I mean, when somebody said I should write a blog, I said, "What's a blog?" I mean, right. I knew nothing.
Tell that for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, for people who think, I'm not techie enough, I've been there, and it is figure outable. So yes, I mean, when we're thinking about the blogging world, if you like, you said your first book came out 10 years ago, so you probably started a little way before that, but when blogging was a big thing. But now, I mean, there's social media and podcasts, there are all the things. How do you recommend writers stay focused on the job at hand, if you like, when they still need to learn stuff and be updated on stuff and manage all the responsibilities and all the things?
Two things I would say. Pick one. So when it comes to social media, we are told, or we believe, I don't know if we're told this, but we somehow have absorbed the information that we have to be everywhere all at once. And it's just not true. So I say pick your favorite social media platform and just stick with it. Stick with it for 6 months. Stick with it for a year. I'm not talking like I tried Instagram for a week and it didn't work for me. No, that's not long enough. Stick with it for a year. And Annie F. Downs says this, and I just repeat her words all the time. She talks about chasing the fun. Chase the fun when it comes to social media, because if it's not fun for you, if you don't figure out a way to make it some kind of fun, now not every aspect will be fun, but some aspect of it that's fun, then you won't do it. So find one that feels like you, and stick with it for a while. So that's one way I'd say. And the reason why social is important there is because that's where your readers are. Figure out where your reader is. First, you have to know who that might be. And then where does that reader hang out, and go hang out there. They might be a Facebook person. They might be a Twitter person. They might be an Instagram person. And try to find one that fits both you and your readers. That's the first thing. And the second thing, when pick one social media platform to talk, to use. But the second thing is, I think it's really important for writers, especially now, and is to realize how much work it takes. It takes more work to create space and keep and hold that space than it does to fill the space. So what I mean by that creatively is, I think it's vital for you as a writer to know what your core focus is. What is it that if you weren't speaking into this, it wouldn't be. Now, that's not to say that you're going to come up with something brand new. Guess what? People don't want brand new. They want something true and familiar that's said in a different and new way. And that's what we all can bring to this conversation. I'm not saying anything that y'all hadn't heard before. We really don't need new, but we do want something that is true. And we often are looking for a new expression of something that is true. And that's our creative work as writers. And so if we know what it is, that core focus of, I talked about, I stand at the intersection of creativity and faith. But also what I do there is I help people discern their next right thing. So I love talking about decisions and discernment, and it's kind of where I like to hang out. There's like a little bit of a niche in there. And I think knowing what yours is helps you put blinders on to what it could be. And here's the lovely thing, Nikki, and maybe this is true for you too, is that it's okay to have to write your way into that. You're not going to wake up one morning and just know, and like, I have this clear vision. I know exactly what I'm doing. It might take a while, but having that as a goal, I think, is so vital in keeping your focus, especially these days as a writer.
I think that's so true. And figuring out our why, people might have heard of Simon Sinek, and I know Megan Miller, I think it is, says when we lose our why, we lose our way. And finding, what fires us up, and what, for me, it's been figuring it out. What really annoys me? Like it annoys me when I see struggle in the world and people going through hard times and thinking that a good life or a full life is off waiting for them in the future, and they can't find it within their struggle. And so that fires me up, and that's the why. Marcia has a question. No, was it Marcia? No, Kelsey. Kelsey says, this sounds interesting, but I've never written any short stories before. Now I have some books that I'm using to learn. My 38th birthday was Sunday. Happy birthday. So one of the things I'm doing in my 39th year is becoming a writer. So I just think we want to cheer you on, Kelsey. That is wonderful. And, one of the glorious things about Hope Writers is that it's for all writers. You say you haven't ever written short stories. In Hope Writers, you'll find people who are writing short stories. They're writing fiction novels, young adult. They're writing nonfiction, poetry. We have playwrights, all sorts of different things. So, and for just $1, you can come and learn for 2 weeks from Hope Writers. So I hope you do that, Kelsey. Before we start wrapping up here, Emily, do you want to just tell us a little bit about why you founded Hope Writers in the first place? What was it that you were seeing amongst the writing community about writers that made you want to start something like Hope Writers?
It's a great question, Nikki. And it's always fun to kind of look back. It was never the master plan for this to become what it is. I'm thrilled that it has. But it really started out exactly like you just said, which was paying attention to what bothers me. And now this was a group effort, so there were several of us who started Hope Writers together. But my why in saying yes to this idea was because I, as a writer, number one, I felt lonely. And number two, I had a lot of questions. I didn't know where to go to get the answers always. But the other thing about that is I had just started, I was kind of a fairly new author, and I was getting lots and lots of questions on my blog and in my email inbox about writing, about the writing process, about publishing. How do I find an editor? What does an agent do? All kinds of questions like that. And I started to answer them via email, one-to-one. But that became my tiny part-time job that I did not get paid for. And so I realized, though, that there are so many of us out there who, we have these words that we want to share. We have a message that we want to bring to the world. And, not to make it sound too cheesy, but I do think that there is a certain aspect of writing that, I don't want to romanticize it, but there is kind of a call or an invitation that I think we feel creatively as writers. Yeah. But the frustration is that we have these things we'd like to say, and we imagine a reader who will read our words. But the trouble is we don't know how to go from where we are to that finished book, or to that way to connect with readers, that we don't know how to bridge that gap. And so really Hope Writers stands in the gap for writers. And it exists because it's what we so wanted when we first started out, which was a place that could help us balance not only the craft and the art of the writing, which in many ways we were kind of doing on our own, but it was that business side of publishing that I'm like, what even is needed? I don't know where to start. Yeah. And so that's kind of what Hope Writers has become, is this place for writers to come to the writing table, to meet other writers at various spaces in their writing path, but then to learn how to balance both the art and craft that we love so well as writers, but also the business side of publishing, not just publishing a traditional book, but also the social media piece, and how to find what does it look like to have an email list, and why do you need one, and how to talk to a reader in a way that a reader can relate to. So some of those things that you could Google and kind of figure out, but you don't always know if you can trust the places that you find, and you kind of cobble things together. And so at Hope Writers, we wanted to have it kind of all in one place. So that was kind of the heartbeat behind it, was just, let's create something that we wish we had.
Yeah, so helpful, so helpful. And I know for myself included, and many other Hope Writers, what it's also helped us figure out is not just what we need to do, but in what order we need to do them. So, because you can, as you say, we jump from an idea to, I want to write a book, but there are many stages in between. And what's been helpful for so many of us is for Hope Writers to have created the Hope Writers, the writing path, which helps people figure out what stage of a writer they are, and what it is they need to be focusing on at that time. And, you can take a quiz and figure out that when you join for just $1 for 2 weeks, and you'll have all sorts of great resources. And I'd love to tell you about them, because I have devoured them. So, Emily obviously has co-founded Hope Writers, but as a member and now a team member, you would, when you join for $1 for just those 2 weeks, you get access to the Hope Writer Library, which has over 150 of these teachings with industry experts, with agents, and with authors and social media experts and podcasters and all the things. You get to join our live weekly teaching that happens every Tuesday. In fact, I'm about to interview author and writing teacher Anne Swindell in a couple of hours, and you'll find some community and the support that we were talking about. So for just $1 for 2 weeks, really, you've got nothing to lose. So has anybody got any other questions? Oh yeah, I should tell you how to do it. I mean, it's been put up on the screen, but super easy, just hopewriters.com/join. And oh yes, Marcia's made a great point about we only see people's finished work and compare it to our everyday work. So yes, it's one of the things we do in Hope Writers, is we celebrate practicing imperfectly and moving forward. So if then nobody has any other questions, I might have to let Emily go. But Emily, we want to thank you for answering all our writing questions and for starting Hope Writers in the first place. And we hope that many people will join the community for just $1. And some people have asked in the past, what happens after those 2 weeks? Yes. Kelsey's asking, what's the cost to join forever? Well, there is a lifetime membership. You can, if you come in forever. I just love it. I love that, Kelsey. You can join for 2 weeks for $1, and that will give you access to the library and the live teachings and the community for those 2 weeks. And then you'll automatically go up to the monthly membership, which is $47, where you will get access to a guided Hope Circle, where you can join a group of people who are being guided through a specific topic-based thing that they want to achieve. Maybe it's writing with purpose and or finding a book proposal or something like that. You'll get access to our membership directory, which is both inward and outward facing. So you can use that if you don't have a website. It's a great way for people to find you and connect with your writing. And you'll also get our wonderful Hope Writers Progress Planner. And so, yes, there is an option to upgrade to the annual membership, or you can become forever, like you say, Kelsey. But that is what happens afterwards. So yes, Emily, thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your day to answer all the things, all the writerly questions.
Oh, it has been my absolute pleasure. Like I said at the beginning, one of my favorite things to do is to talk with writers about writing. And that's something that we continue to do inside of Hope Writers. So if you're watching, we would love to have you. We do close our doors on Friday, which will be September the 24th, if you're watching this live. So we would love to have you join our community. So thank you, Nikki, for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, Emily. It's been fantastic. Thanks so much.